Don't be resistant to AI. We play in a blue collar industry, and that's what makes the industry great. Salt of the earth individuals, but don't be resistant to it. Just try it.
Beyond the Wrench with jayg from WrenchWay.
Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is jayg and I am your host. This week's guest is Trent Broberg, CEO of Fullbay. Trent is a thoughtful leader with a passion for helping businesses grow, embracing innovation, and building strong teams. In our conversation, we're going to dive into leadership, the role technology and AI will play in the future of repair shops, and what it takes to navigate change in a rapidly evolving industry. Trent brings a unique perspective on where our industry is headed and how shop owners can position themselves for success in the years ahead. Welcome to the show, Trent. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jay. I think the intro there just says I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, and that's how I've been for 25 years in this industry.
Well, you've got a long history in this industry, but you're relatively new to Fullbay, a first-time guest of our show. Fullbay has been a partner of ours for years at this point, and great partners at that. Bringing in new leadership, it's always fun to kind of get to know somebody, and I've gotten to know you a little bit over this first 8 months. But how's it been so far?
Fantastic. So I've been here, as you mentioned, Jay, for 8 months. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a ton of change. It's been a ton of change in the market, the broader economy, and Fullbay. We're bringing new products to market. We're moving faster than ever. We've got a great position in the space, and most importantly, I've been traveling full-time my whole life, and Fullbay is based in Phoenix, and I live in Phoenix, so I get to be a full-time dad, reliable coach.
From what I recall, you are an alum of Arizona State, correct?
I am, yeah.
As is my wife. That was a yes. I wasn't overly familiar with the Sun Devils until I got married or started dating my wife, now 15 years ago. But now it's a pretty steady staple in our house up here in Wisconsin. We've got ASU stuff all over the place.
You might be the only one up there in Wisconsin. Yeah, I tell people I spent 6 years at ASU. What I leave out is the grad school part because it's a little funnier.
Yeah, right. Well, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. You've obviously been in the industry for a long time, went to Arizona State. What happened after Arizona State?
Yeah, it's a funny story. And we're just on the tail end of ASE Connect, which is our user conference for the industry, really. And walked up on stage holding a beer in my hand and said, and kind of told this story of how I got started in the industry. But I was at the tail end of ASU in undergrad, and I was sitting with the founder of Swift Transportation, and he said, Trent, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I had got to know him as friends of friends, and I said, I don't know, I've been going to ASU for 4 years drinking. And he said, why don't you come work for me on Monday? So that is my origin story. Shortly after I show up at work in dress clothes, he puts me out on a truck for a week. So I spent the week in a truck, unbeknownst to me, with no toiletries, change of clothes, nothing. So I spent Monday through Friday on a ride to just get acclimated to what happens in the world of OTR and in the Class 8 trucks. And then a year I spent at Swift doing, changing tires, greasing fifth wheels, managing drivers for quite some time, 50 drivers typically in a fleet. And that's where I cut my teeth.
Man, at the time, it probably, and maybe you were ready just to dive headfirst in, but you almost, as you're going on that first week on the road, have to look back and say, college wasn't so bad.
I'll always, if you're out there, Larry Clement, thank you for taking me on the ride. He unfortunately was a chimney, so I had my head out the window most of the time. But I'll tell you, it was a good perspective. It was what I think I learned most was to do the hard work, because I never complained through that entire year. But in my head, I'm going, man, just like everybody, you go to college, you think, oh, you're going to sit behind a desk and make all kinds of money and do these things. And, I had a finance marketing, degree, uh, and here I am greasing fifth wheels and like I said, unloading a 53 footer full of tires in the middle of summer in Phoenix, and never complained once. And I think it was a good way. And I think that earned a lot of credibility for me in their leadership.
Well, I think that's a really good lesson, as we're sitting at the time of year where a lot of fresh college graduates are coming out into the workforce. Is a great lesson in what you're talking about there, of regardless of what your degree was and how educated you are, there is so much to learn as soon as you get in. And really, I think the more you can learn the true nuts and bolts of an operation and how things work, and how, you went on the road to get that firsthand knowledge of what it's truly like to be on the road. You can have all the education in the world, but until you kind of go through those steps and really kind of learn systems and learn how the real world works, your education will come into play. It'll be really, really handy at some point, but the willingness to roll up your sleeves and just get to work and learn is so important.
No one's going to do that. We have a culture here at Fullbay that we're continuing to foster. And I've always said this in my career, 80% is on you and 20% is on the company. So as you think about all of you listeners out there, myself included, you've got to take the initiative. You've got to do what you need to do, whether it's ask for this position, put in the extra efforts, or find something that really you're passionate about. But 80% of your career is on you. The company only owes you 20%. And oftentimes that's the inverse in people's mindset.
That's great advice. So let's continue on with your career. As you go through a Swift, what does that lead to?
Yeah, no, spent worked in finance and marketing, and fantastic career, fantastic company. They've grown in, continued to grow with Night Swift now, and still friends with people today that are over there and executives. So that was just such a great experience. Spent almost 10 years there. Wanted to spread my wings, no issues. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, I've learned a lot here. Where else can I learn? I don't sit well. I want to go learn more. So I spent a couple of years at DB Schenker, which is, global freight forwarder based in Germany. They wanted me to move to Germany. Wasn't in the cards. And I found a small Idaho company called Internet Truck Stop at the time, and went to work over there, and spent almost 10 years there growing that business into truckstop.com, and what it is today is ultimately COO. That was a great experience as well.
Was that kind of at that startup level when you went there, or how far along was the company?
Yeah, they were a little farther past startup. It was, founded by a gentleman named Scott Moskrip, just a fantastic, smartest person you'll ever meet. And it was started in a small town, New Plymouth, Idaho, and it was, under 100 employees. It was fairly small, and it was all owned. I actually started to work for one of the acquisitions they made. It was a partial acquisition. So that's kind of how I worked as a GM structure, and owned that it was a TMS product in the space, and then continued to grow. We switched the brand, learned a ton from people in the industry there, and what that, they're fundamentally truckstop.com is the kind of the town square, the spot market of freight. So because of that, and because of the amount of freight, which was at the time about 12% of the US GDP, that went through that platform, I just got to know everybody in the industry.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Just one, the 12% of this gigantic industry, right? Like, and the amount of connections that you're able to make because of that is hugely impactful to your career, I have to imagine.
Yeah, as I started off, it is. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, so that fit really well in that intersection of trucking. I have a very close perspective with drivers, because I worked with drivers for so long, and that's how I started my career in managing drivers. And that allowed me to get into that. And these are typically owner operator small businesses that work with Truck Stop. And that allowed me to kind of bridge the gap between the technology and innovation side of things and the trucking. And I think most people would call me an extrovert, and that kind of works to that network effect that you're out there in the space and you're learning and meeting great people in this industry.
Yeah, it is hugely impactful. And then that eventually leads to you coming to Fullbay.
Yeah, actually, I spent almost 5 years at the largest automotive logistics company right before Fullbay, based in St. Louis, a company called Assertis. Fantastic business. Grew that into a platform, acquired 8 businesses, and they're doing great today in the automotive logistics space. They service, OEMs, dealerships, fleet management companies, and many others. And I was on the road for both of those companies almost full time, 4 out of every 5 weeks, whether I was in Idaho or Chicago or St. Louis. And I saw this. I knew Fullbay. I jumped over to Fullbay. I knew Fullbay because it was based here in Phoenix. I knew a board member. I knew the bankers. They're private equity owned. So I knew a lot of people around this business, and it just worked out great.
Before we get into the Fullbay stuff, because there's a lot there, I do always ask those that have been on the road a lot for travel advice, because I spend quite a bit of time on the road myself. I'm always looking for ways to improve my experience or make it, some of it is not even the experience of travel. It's how to navigate home life and trying to, we have a 9-year-old son. So how do you get him to school when I'm on the road? And, all of the things that go into it that maybe you don't think about.
Yeah.
But anything that you learned in your years of travel, I know this is a very vague question, but in your years of travel that maybe those folks that are hitting the roads all the time might be able to learn from.
Yeah, you learn that I learned very quickly that my wife is an angel, and she is a retired elementary school teacher, and she gave up her career because of this. Right? We had kids. I've got a 12 and a 9-year-old, 12 tomorrow, and a 9-year-old. And when I was on the road and trying to balance that, we had to make a decision on what we were going to do. Because at the time, we're talking, 12, 15 years ago, that was really hard. It was a very hard decision for us to make. And she made the same investment that I made in my career, in her career, and in thinking about it and how you make that 80-20 rule. And, it helps that we've got a fantastic family around us. And, the number one thing that I learned very quickly is just to over communicate. And while my kids were young, I continued to make sure that I always answered the phone. If they called, I always answered the phone. If I'm in a board meeting, it's like, I'll call you back. So everybody around me knew that my family was important to me, that my kids were important to me. My wife was really important to me. And we were going through COVID, right? So it was all Zoom. It was similar to this kind of mentality. And what I would also do through that time is anytime my kids, because they're young at the time, would come in, they would join the Zoom with me. So everybody at the company knew both of my kids. They all knew them. It's like, hey, Lincoln, how you doing? Hey, Barrett, how you doing? Meet Jay. Here's who Jay is. And they'll ask a couple questions, and then, okay, we're back on to it. So I tried to, and it doesn't always work. I tried to never take my job and elevate it above my kids and wife and family.
That is just good life advice as a whole. And as you talk through those are real conversations that happen even with my wife and I. My wife is a 3rd grade teacher, and it's at times you're absolutely right. She's had to make sacrifices as we've grown the company, and it at times is challenging, and never saying that in the sense of like wanting anybody to feel sorry for me, but it's a different dynamic than maybe the general 8 to 5 where you're just, kind of reporting to a shop every day or whatever. So I give you a lot of credit for navigating that, because that is maybe a little more challenging than people give it credit for.
Yeah. It's all about sleeps. How many sleeps are you gone? Not how many days, how many sleeps are you gone? There's a lot of red eyes associated to that, to try to get home or not, depending on how that worked. But
A
But
lot of times I'm getting back to the airport after midnight, but it was better to get home for that night. I like that a lot.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, this is great. So ultimately, that is where we lead to Fullbay then. And
yeah.
as I mentioned at the top, Fullbay has been a great partner of ours for many years, and even through transitions, it's just been a wonderful partnership. I think the company as a whole, the fabric of it, and the culture has carried on. Right. I think just a really cool place to work. Everybody that I always talk to is just always just overly great to me personally too, right? Where they've really gone out of their way, and the company itself, I have to imagine, as you're looking at it from an outsider's perspective, there's got to be some intrigue there in general about what a great company it is, and really kind of the reputation that it carries throughout the industry.
That's right. Yeah. And first off, Jay, thank you for the partnership over the years. It obviously
Yeah,
predates
thank you.
me, so I can take no credit. Uh, but you have built a fantastic community, just as Fullbay has, and our ability to bring those communities together because we have the same audience is has been fantastic over the years. And the help
Yes.
with the state of duty heavy repair and some of the content you put out. And there's foreshadowing, there's a lot more fun stuff we can do together as we get on our data. So um, yeah, no, I think, as I was looking at, understanding who Fullbay is and what the opportunity is, Fullbay is, Fullbay is a very well-regarded company, and it proved out in our user conference, right? When you sit in an executive role, sometimes things roll downhill and you're sitting at the bottom of the hill and trying to figure out what are the challenges with the product. And look, we're imperfect, we recognize that, but when you sit and talk to these customers about their life and their story and their family operations and how they've grown to second generation, all on the backs of a platform that the founders at Fullbay created, it's a pretty fun story to be in. We did 6.5 billion through the software last year. It's got 5,000 customers. We've got some fun stuff on the horizon that we can get into here, and
Yeah.
look, we're growing faster than ever.
Well, you mentioned the conference, Diesel Connect. I believe, was this the fourth year of Diesel Connect? I
Six,
believe
yeah,
six. Oh my gosh. Okay.
yeah.
So I've had the fortune of coming multiple times to the conference, and I'll never forget the first year going, and just really kind of everybody was a little nervous and how it was going to go, and they just absolutely knocked it out of the park from the start. And this year, as we've kind of graduated through the years, really started to like it is such a great conference. The amount that the type of content that happened there, and I just think back to you bringing that beer on stage to kind of kick things off, right? It was one of those very memorable presentations where you see the CEO of Fullbay walk out with a beer on stage, and you're like, this. I wonder what turn this is going to take here. This is an interesting one.
It's important that we all bring levity to what we do. I think it's important that Diesel Connect is one, an educational conference, but also a little bit of fun mixed in there. I think that is how we build and foster the relationships we're in. Look, we all take ourselves too serious. We all have our own challenges. All of our companies have our own challenges, whether they're unique or similar. And if we can take some time to thank each other and just be present in the moment, I think that's important. And the conference was it's my first time being at the conference, and it was just such a great event to just talk to customers and understand who they are, what their origin story is. I'm always fascinated by origin stories because I've got an interesting one myself. And it was a great conference.
So as a NASCAR fan, you had Larry McReynolds on the stage right off the bat. How was Larry?
Larry Mack, yeah, I got to meet him. I mean, he's a legend, right? Larry Mack is the greatest crew chief driver ever. And I had some nice conversations with him backstage about specific drivers and, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Senior and working with them closely. Unfortunately, we had the loss of obviously Kyle and and he had
Yeah.
worked with him, and that was the day after. So there was just a lot of emotions wrapped up in that because I
That
too am
was
in that.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, the timing of that, and for him to kind of keep his composure on stage, he's a true pro in how he approaches things. And yeah, I was geeking out from the audience side, and really enjoyed that. And then you had Dave Anderson as well, who has been on the podcast before, and a friend of mine, and talked about accountability for shops. And I think his message was really, really important to shops that were out there in how they run their operations, how they hold
Yeah.
folks accountable to a higher standard. Just all in all, just those two sessions alone would have been worth it for most people. And then there was so much more that went into it over and above that.
Yeah, yeah, we try to do a lot of breakout sessions. We try to bring helpful people, right? Helpful in the context of what can you take back and work with their leaders or work with their technicians or their individuals to just ultimately make their profitability or whatever their, not everybody wants to be growing, and not everybody, sometimes it's a lifestyle business, but you can take these nuggets and take them back to both your professional and personal lives. I think that's important.
Yeah, I had a couple of breakout sessions myself there.
Yep.
The audience there is always engaging. They're always asking questions and wanting to get better. One of my favorite conferences as a whole, just in general. The facilities there, phenomenal. Always have a blast. And so, yeah, just kudos to you and the team for another heck of a conference. And as you're listening to this, if you're in that diesel world and you're looking for an opportunity to get more learning and get more ability to run your business better, there's not a better conference out there. It is really, really well run.
Yeah, thank you. We had about 400 attendees. We were capped, so get in early if you're going to get tickets for next year. It'll be similar in May next year here in Phoenix, Arizona. I promise you, it's not as hot as people think that time of year. But yeah, I appreciate the positive sentiment there. It's only going to get bigger and better.
Now, there were a lot of things as again, as I led the show with, we're going to talk about maybe advancements within the industry and things that we can do to kind of move forward. And so as I'm thinking about this and kind of almost recapping the conference, you had some pretty significant announcements at the conference.
Yeah, we were holding patiently to announce what will be the new platform for Fullbay. It's called Fullbay Next right now. It will just be Fullbay as we launch that out the door, but we've got to talk about things distinctly between what we have today and what we have tomorrow. The way that we're thinking about Fullbay, and this is some more information we didn't even share at the conference, but the way that we're thinking about Fullbay as an entity, we have a product on the shelf and it's an application. It's got its challenges. It's sometimes challenged in reporting structure for enterprise large customers and many other things that I'm sure customers are thinking right now today. And we recognize all of the pitfalls that go into that. We have built, and it is in beta, we have built a new ground up platform. So rather than thinking things of an application, we built Fullbay as a platform so that now we think about bringing best in class partners into the fold, think about the integrations we can do with our customers' internal systems. That will be a game changer for the industry. And we're having just fantastic feedback from early adopters here.
It's exciting. As far as timeline goes, what are you looking at there?
Yeah, so you'll see, like I said, we announced it at the conference. We're in beta with some customers. So thank you, customers that are helping us always get better. We recognize that. And you'll see this coming out in Q3, where we start launching this to select customers, typically the smaller end of customers, as we think about the launch and platform, so we don't disrupt our customer base. But what's most important here is that it is AI native and it is AI first. What that allows us to do, as everybody knows, is move a lot faster with development, with feature releases, with how we're thinking about this platform versus an application. And you'll see a rapid development, you'll see rapid release schedules, and it's going to be a lot of fun, that's for sure.
how do you keep up with all of the advancements? We talk about AI all the time. We talk about just how rapidly things are moving right now in terms of technology. As the CEO of a company, how do you kind of stay on top of that? I mean, there's a lot going on right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. The short answer is you can't. So you do your best. I block time specifically for this throughout the week.
Mm.
Research, development. I think the most important part right now is just to use the products. Use Claude in your own life so that you're eating your own dog food. And I'm in there building out agents and I'm building out workflows and co-work and doing things that maybe is unique in that sense. But it's about having the right team in place. Our technology leadership is world class. They've built two gentlemen here, Kirk and Scott, and many others that report to them, and John architects, and they have built world class softwares. They've come from 30 years at Microsoft and Amazon and these companies that are just on the forefront of success, and they're building out what I believe is one of the best. It's one of the best development teams I've ever worked with.
That's an insane. That's really, really cool. Now, what do you see for the future of this, right? Because as we're maybe looking forward to this, I think from a shop's perspective, this can oftentimes be really scary because you're hearing about all of this, and every time you turn on the news, there's something else about AI, or any trade publication you're reading, there's AI. Like, I think there are some of us that might be overwhelmed by it right now and trying to digest everything that's coming. But in a lot of ways, it's going to make our lives better, right? We're going to make things, and some of those mundane tasks that maybe we don't want to do as much, it might help us there as well. What do you see for the future of this as it relates to the diesel repair industry?
Yeah, you just go through any shop, go through any business, and look at all the administrative work that can be cut out through AI. That's the way that we think about it. We map out the customer journey. We understand where things can be solved through AI. We live in a service industry. You can't AI a wrench, right? But you can for sure serve up the right data to make that easier to find a part, to find what we need to do to figure out the predictive maintenance solution, get into understanding scheduling, understanding where the parts are, how to get them just in time. When you look at that whole continuum, there's so much to do there, and we're just scratching the surface. But 65% of our shops don't use AI today, or what they do is chat and conversational. Right? We have AI products native now on the platform that are helping to transcribe for English as a second language, that are helping clean up tech notes, which is always a challenge for service writers out there, and understanding how to get things in a nice package. So we're trying to do things that we can in the product today, as we're simultaneously building, Fullbay Next.
Well, and you look at a problem like technician notes that you mentioned, and this has been a problem forever. I think I don't remember a time where this was like an easy thing, right? You might have a technician that does a really good job at it, but then the rest of the team might struggle with it. I think the ability to use technology like that to simplify their job, and maybe I don't know what your plans are in that regard, but I think that you look at the administrative tasks, that is one of the most common ones that I hear from techs, about writing stories and making sure that they're detailing what repair they did. I do think there's just such a huge opportunity for AI to help out there, and again, make the lives of technicians and managers better.
Yeah, when you look at this problem to solve, it's about wrench time, right? How can we take the business as a whole and apply more revenue generating opportunities to a shop? So when that part of that is, like you said, tech notes and tech notes cleanup, and understanding, we have shops right now that are leveraging mics, Bluetooth mics, to dictate to Fullbay, to then transcribe everything in a different language than English, and it packages it up, cleans it up, converts it to English and translates it to English and gets it into, the invoice and the system itself. So that just things like that are big savers, big time savers, so that you can spend more time on the wrench and more time doing what you do best to earn, money.
And less time doing the stuff that you hate doing, right? I think there are a lot of technicians that would admit that they don't love writing up those notes and maybe try to push through it rather than, kind of do it at a high level. I've seen some technicians are fantastic at it. Don't get me wrong. There's some that would rather not. And I think I probably fell in that boat back in the day, right?
Sure.
Of not wanting to write up the descriptions as much. So I do think the better that gets, then you're saving time up front, and maybe the time up front can be spent on workflow or trying to get more business in the door, whatever it might be. It does open you up to do more proactive things
Sure.
to help grow the business. I just think there's so much value there.
Yeah, in our reporting, 57% of shops are understaffed. Right? That's not a shocking statistic to anybody. But how do we solve for that? You solve for that through, obviously, technician recruiting and things, specifically that WrenchWay does, but also through being more efficient at how we solve problems, how we write up, how we find parts, what are the diagnostic solutions, and how we're fixing things, and largely how do we predict these movements farther upstream.
If you're an automotive, diesel, or collision instructor, or an educator helping students explore these careers, this is for you. Building relationships with local shops takes time, and knowing who's willing to help isn't always clear. ASE Connects, in partnership with WrenchWay, brings schools and industry together on one easy online platform at no cost for schools. At the heart of ASE Connects is School Assist, the online resource that lets you post exactly what your program needs. From guest speakers, shop tours, tools, advisory committee members, career fair participants, and even student job opportunities, shops can see your requests and respond directly to you. You'll also get access to instructor-focused resources, webinars, and templates designed to save time and strengthen industry partnerships. Even if your school doesn't have a formal auto or diesel program, you can still participate to help connect interested students with real-world opportunities. ASE Connects is free for schools. Get started at wrenchway.com/solutions/schools or use the link in the show notes.
How do you see it playing out for predictive maintenance, right? And that part fascinates me, especially as it relates to the aftermarket world in a way that you're trying to, for me anyway, I'm trying to wrap my hands around how does that work for that predictive maintenance and trying to help a customer understand their truck and trying to get it maybe a little bit more, I guess, proactively out in front of some things that could save you a lot of money down the road.
I first typically start with, are you doing PM services? That is a standard, right? And that is, while you think it would be more widely adopted, PM scheduling isn't quite as adopted as you think. So you got to get to that level, right? Now, AI can help you in understanding what are the PM schedules or what should the PM schedules be, right? Once you get out of warranty and it's kind of this open space, right, where everybody's got their own program. So that's first. We earlier this year purchased a company called Pit Stop, a gentleman named Shiva, who's fantastic. Parents have owned a shop his whole life, so he grew up in a shop. And he built this predictive maintenance solution, and he's solving real world problems at very high 80 to 90% success rates with things like soot levels and what's your TPMS and some other challenges that happen in this space. So when you take a step back and look at it, it's about leveraging data. Fullbay is the only people out there that has, $6.5 billion last year in service orders and repairs and parts and things like that. We needed a product that could take all that data, which we're not leveraging as we should today, and build predictive modeling on top of that. And that's what we're doing. So we're starting to test some of these models. And when you think about the usability here, it's really around understanding when to schedule and how to schedule, right? If we can reduce, break fixes or roadside repairs or tow fees, right? It becomes such an advantageous situation for shops and their relationship with the fleets. So the shops are now using Pit Stop to then point solution their fleets that they contract with and say, here, connect your telematics. Now the shop can see all the assets there and red, green, yellow. Which ones need to be scheduled, which ones need to be pulled off the road, depending on what the telematics is saying, depending on PM scheduling, depending on other predictive behaviors. So it's at the forefront, and there's a lot of work to be done.
Is that based on when you're looking at, it's maybe not connected data, but more predictive data? So meaning that you're looking at maybe how many miles they're putting on in a certain amount of time, and basing service schedules. And I'm sure there's a bunch of it that goes into it that I'm oversimplifying, but we're talking more that side than the connected data, right?
It's actually both. So
Okay.
yes, you have behavioral traits depending on driving behaviors in the truck itself, right? So maintenance scheduling, and that's a little more rules based when you think about, we get to this miles, like in your own car, you get to 10,000 miles, I got to do these services, right? Those are more rule based, but there are behaviors, and then there's sensors throughout the vehicle. So as telematics grows, or as sensor technology continues to grow with smart trucks and smart trailers, then you can take that data and make inferences off that data, because you've seen that same red flag 100 times or 1,000 times across 5,000 shops. You know what the service repair needs to be for that red flag, because you already know what that truck, what that combo drivetrain is. And you've got all these data points that are saying, oop, I've seen this before. We should do something about it before something happens, right? And think about it just in the soot levels, right? You're starting, once the sensor technology is reading that from the truck, it's feeding it into Fullbay, and now you're able to understand, my mileage is dropping. Now I'm paying more for fuel. I got to go do something. Depending on if there's cleaning or faults that are showing up, there's a lot we can do there to add back to those fleets. And that's about helping the shop create value back to their fleet, their customers.
How do you see that evolving in that customer communication then? Is it something where it's not autonomously, it's automatically sent as far as like a warning or something that you're trying to get in front of the driver or whoever's running maintenance for that vehicle? How does that communication strategy look in terms of communicating with them?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways how this happens. It depends on what products you're using, what your platforms are. We have about 1,200, about 1,000 to 1,200 shops that we would term as kind of hybrid shops that have in-house repairs. They do third-party repairs, but they also have a fleet in-house. So their ability to now take Pit Stop, the Fullbay product here, they're running their fleet on Pit Stop as you would a fleet management system. The shop is running on Fullbay, they're connected. So now you've got a synchronous platform that's talking to each other. It's what are the assets doing? What are the downtime? The shop's repairing. When is it ready, right? What's my ETA, estimated time availability, so I can pick the truck up, get it back into circulation. All of these things are happening now at the same time. And as we continue to advance this, once you layer on the smart scheduling, and now I can do my workforce automation with my technicians. I can do my mobile, which one should be mobile repair, which one should come to the bay. It's a huge matrix of things that we're solving for and opportunities, but that's perfect world right now. That's why that was part of our thesis with Pit Stop. And we're seeing it real time today all over the place with these fleets.
How do you see that impacting like a technician's daily life? And you talk about smart scheduling. is there maybe a different approach for them from a, really kind of looking inside the bay and how, if I'm a technician and I'm going in each day, how that's going to impact my workflow and how I'm dispatched work, or, does it have much of a change there, or is it kind of work as usual? It's just you're kind of picking up the next job and rolling.
Well, I think there's a couple ways to think about it. One is I'm acutely aware that sometimes technicians don't love Fullbay because they have to do tech notes, and the shops, the ownership or bosses, create steps along the way that are not driving commission to revenue or not driving variable based revenue. So to them, or variable based compensation to them. We're solving for a lot of that to make things easier, more streamlined. So yes, it will be much easier and more streamlined. But you think about all the other wasted time. Now I've got diagnostics, understanding the diagnostics into what the problem is, what's the issue that's going on here. We can absolutely help with that to get to a solution faster when you think about the 3 C's. And then ultimately, you got to go find a part. That's one of the most challenging things in our industry. There's no right to repair. Yeah. There's legislation that's kind of got blown up a little bit. And there's just a lot of challenges happening in this space because, look, big trucks are bespoke. Not all are created equal. And so we can definitely help with that. We have 84% of our shops sell parts and have a parts inventory in Fullbay. Wouldn't it be great if one shop could buy from another shop because they've got all these parts out there available?
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, and you look at, if you've got a large parts inventory, parts turn is such an important KPI within a shop, right? And so the more, from my experience and running a parts department at one point, that was one of those that I constantly had my eye on, constantly looking for obsolete inventory or ways that you can clean off the shelves to bring in more valuable inventory. I'm jealous of current day parts managers because I think they've got so many more tools and so many more, like, I feel like more detailed analytics to truly understand your parts inventory than a lot of the, like what we did back in the day, which was very manual, going through spreadsheets and really just kind of looking at pulling reports, making sure you're pulling the reports the right way back then. Now it feels like you're giving them a lot more tools to be able to manage that inventory so that it doesn't get out of control, because that is one of those things where if it gets out of control, that can be a killer for cash flow really, really fast.
Yeah. Your balance sheet will hold a lot of inventory that might become obsolete, to your point. And I think the first step, as you know, Jay, is bad data in, bad data out. You got to catalog it. We got to make it easier to continue to manage our parts inventory. And then as you think about a platform economics, is if I don't have the part, how do I source it easily? Parts cross information, understanding who's got parts, and just as important, where they are and how fast can I get it here?
Yeah. Especially in that world where if there's a breakdown, that truck driver or that company is losing money by the minute, right? So you've got a little pressure on you to get things turned around quickly, and parts availability has been a killer for a lot of people doing that. So just more visibility to it, I think, is helpful. And the faster, and that's another example of, like, okay, you hear some of the horror stories of AI, but that's another opportunity for AI to make our lives significantly better.
Yeah, what we have currently in the product today that we're testing, where you can take a picture of anything on the truck or trailer, and it will tell you what the parts are, what's wrong with the part, how do I find that. We're starting to increase the fidelity on parts cross information just from a picture. So the ability to get to the right solution faster, and as you mentioned, the AI to predict what the right solution might be. Hey, before you come into the shop, take a picture of XYZ. Now I've got it. Now I'm understanding what is wrong with the truck, and I'm already sourcing or inventorying parts. So the truck is JIT. So there's a world where you start getting into a much faster in and out gate in these bays than we have seen historically with AI, right? Just in that solution alone.
It's crazy. It's really fun to think about how our world fun, and I think almost nerve-wracking, exciting, terrifying about how our world is going to look in 5 to 10 years, right? Because it's going to have a big impact, and it's going to maybe change the way we do some things. But I'm very much a glass half full type of person, and I look at maybe the advancements that are going to make our lives better and easier, and ultimately at the end of the day, if you're in a shop, you're trying to keep your customers happy, and if it helps you drive that happiness and maybe speeds things up, I think that that's a win-win for everybody. And I do think, you've got young kids, I've got a young son, and you look at the fact that they've really not had to wait for anything in their life, right? Like if they whatever they want, they get immediately. I think we've got that next generation coming up through that their expectation might be different than what ours has been traditionally, right? They're not used to waiting, and it's going to take some really proactive thought on our end on how we get out in front of that, because I do think you're going to have a different demographic of customers here in a few years.
Yeah, we're solving real world problems today, and looking at where are we going to be, 5 years from now. As you sit as an executive in any company, you put together 3 and 5 year plans. Honestly, I don't know how anybody puts together a 5 year plan right now, because the 5 year plan that we started the end of the year off that we put together in my first couple months here, you 30, 60-day plans. We'll have all that done next year. So, how do we look at what used to be a 5 year plan and understand what we need to, how we skate to the puck 3 years from now? Even it's a challenge. And I think to your point, immediate gratification and how we drive efficiency throughout all of our customers and the industry is how we think about things.
I said I empathize, or maybe not empathize. I feel sorry for educators right now, because you look at maybe in a middle school teacher or high school teacher, and you're trying to teach valuable life skills, and a lot of which won't change, right? There's a lot of things that are core to a good base of a life, but then you're like, what jobs am I training these kids for when in 10 years down the road?
My 9-year-old is the first person, my 12-year-old almost is the first person that's AI native that I know. You and I, when we try to find a solution, we go to Google. We say, I'll just Google it, right? It's become a verb. He goes to chat, and everything he does, he just sits in his room when he's trying to solve a problem or think about the planets. He's a pretty interesting kid, and he just has these really high level conversations with chat, and he doesn't know a Google. He doesn't go to Google. So that's the way that we need to be thinking. Don't be resistant to AI. If there's one thing I can tell, there's a lot of people out in more rural communities, or we play in a blue collar industry, and that's what makes the industry great. Salt of the earth individuals, but don't be resistant to it. Just try it. Just get in there and learn. There's lots of resources to learn. Just try it.
I think you have to embrace it. I'll give a shout out. When I was in the truck space, I was on the trailer side at a utility trailer dealership early on in my career. And that's when YouTube was just getting off the ground. And I remember my boss at the time being like, that's the future. The video is the future. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like what all are you even going to put out there? And then boy, has he been proven right over and over and over again. Just with the advancements in video and how much that evolved from when it was early stage in my career. But then you look at that, like how that just continues to evolve, and I give a lot of credit to him for kind of setting that in my brain of like just always looking for that next thing and trying to figure out, how is that going to make my life better? How is that going to make others' lives better, and how do you get out in front of that? So it's a mindset, and like you can either be terrified of it or embrace it. And I think right now, if you embrace it, you're probably putting yourself ahead.
Well, I think it's this week we got our first trillionaire out there in the space, and SpaceX. launched into the public markets, and I think Elon's a prime example of that, right? It's really being forward thinking, first principles thinking. What are the problems I'm trying to solve? Pragmatically, don't overcomplicate things. And yeah, there's YouTube is now the second most trafficked site on the internet in the world, right? Google and then
Nuts.
YouTube, right? And it has been a change leader for every industry everywhere. Period.
Well, and I think all of that is that we'll have to have you back on probably 6 months or a year down the road to talk about kind of what's happened since this recording, because
Yeah.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of change now. Uh, as we kind of conclude the technology side, I do want to maybe make mention. You talked about the report. What he's referring to is the state of heavy duty report that Fullbay does, and does a fantastic job at. Very, very well done report. We chip in occasionally and try to help out where we can. But talk to us about maybe what you've learned out of this year's report, and just, I know when I read through it, it's a really, really easy report to read, which I appreciate. You break down a lot there, but you pulled a lot of data from your shops that I thought was really, really impactful. And I think even if you're not a diesel shop listening to this, I think if you read through that report as just a uh, general consumer, you'd probably learn something. There's a lot in there. Anything in particular that you feel that you thought was kind of a good, some good feedback for industry, or good feedback for Fullbay as a whole?
Yeah, I think generally, people gravitate towards financial metrics, myself included, of course. And shops are getting better. So the majority of shops said it's better, year over year. So that's great. I think we're seeing those trends happen in real time in 2026. The freight market, right, is kind of in this really nice upswing, highest rates you've ever seen. So the fleets that our customers service are more interested in pulling trucks off the fence and fixing lot rod on trailers and getting them back into production, and really pushing for the opportunity to in the spot and contract markets to really to step into that space. I think you've got an economy that's continues to grow and expand. You see the Wall Street continuing to grow. So these are all opportunities that our customers are taking advantage of. And it's about us to try to make them more efficient, to get these turns, to get their contracts with these fleets to manage. I think 17% of shops have increased their mobile capacity. So that's interesting. I think we continue to see mobility as a service continue to move up and to the right. When you don't have to pull trucks in, you can go do PM services in a lot. I think that's important. Obviously labor and wages and things like that continue to move up and to the right. Up almost 8% year over year. That will continue to be a trend. It's an inflationary environment. It's been heavy inflation for quite some time. Rates aren't quite at that, while they're at the highest peak we've ever seen for rates. Inflation adjusted, it's not necessarily where you would argue a boom time would be. And then it's really about technology adoption. How do we think about technology? Early on this year and last year, there was a lot of talk about tariffs. Half the shops said they saw no impact from tariffs. I think that'll continue to increase, right? Because if you have parts inventories, you didn't have to reorder yet, and now you're seeing that kind of play out. But I think, that there's a lot of those trends that are just continuing to move up and to the right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one that I'm forever curious about is the need to raise technician wages while also remaining profitable, right? And I think there's a lot of pressures on labor rates, of customer posted labor rates, to kind of keep up with that. And it's hard because you feel like you're constantly raising your rate, and in order to stay competitive in kind of this competitive technician environment, and to I think shops, it feels like, are starting to kind of get their hands around that maybe a little bit more. But as we get our hands around it, I think the target continues to move, right? We keep having to pay these folks that are worth it, right? Like they're worth it. We just have to be able to communicate that value to the end user, because they are going to pay more when they're getting a repair done, right? And so I do think maybe that is an evolution our industry needs to really kind of lean into a little bit more, is educating consumers as to why their bills are going up. I think every bill for everything's going up drastically, but it's hard from a shop's perspective to continue to push the limits there, because it feels like you're constantly raising your labor rate now.
Yeah, I think labor rate is obviously a statistic we watch closely and help people with, but in WrenchWay particularly, obviously you've built a great business on some of this.
Yeah.
I think it's not a lot different than wages in general. Wages continue to move up, and I'll tell you what's moving up faster are technologists and AI people and people that are focused on in that world. And it's part of the overall P&L structure of a business, and you have to be confident. Peter Cooper was at our industry. Shout out to Peter.
Yeah, Peter's great.
He'll talk through how to run a better P&L driven shop, and his motto that he will tell you over and over again: the average hours worked for a technician is 46 hours, paying 6 hours of overtime. He says overtime's a killer on your P&L for lots of reasons. People think, oh, I'm getting more work, but there's a lot of reasons why that's challenging, and burnout and such. But it's really about being firm and being confident in who you are as a shop, and then simply just articulating back. And if somebody's not comfortable with it, you can go find more business. I promise you that are comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Their asset costs are going up. Everybody's costs are going up, and it will forever. That's never going to change. The average trucks now are astronomical to purchase and put in production, right?
Yeah.
So it's just never going to change. So it's really about having the great relationships with your customers and being transparent with them.
Just good advice as a whole. As we conclude the show, I do have a few just fun, quick hitting questions for you, and more get to know you type of questions. So, first one is, what was your first car?
A Jeep Cherokee, 1991.
Nice. All right.
Box.
All right.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of camping. I think I got all 4 tires off the ground a few times. Don't tell my dad.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning. Early workout, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not a Mark Wahlberg 4 a.m. club, but I'm close.
I think I saw somewhere Mark is now waking up at like 2:30 in the morning, and I that's too early for me. That's too early.
I think scientifically that's bad for you.
Yes, it has to be. It has to be. Well, were you always a morning person?
I don't think there is a morning teenager or college student. I think the only class that I didn't get an A in at ASU, you make your own judgments there on how hard that is, but was a 7:40 a.m. class. So no, I wasn't always. But when you get into trucking, you start early. So from day one, you're there early. The clock starts, you go work from 6 to 6, and that you put in a half day. That was kind of a mentality back in the day.
Yeah, it's a good mentality to have. Last question, what is your favorite type of food? I'm
not a foodie, so I don't really care. I eat to, I try to be healthy. I should be more healthy than I am today for sure. But I'm not a big foodie. What I struggle with, being in this role and having been in this role for a while, are long dinners. They'll struggle for me. I'd much rather sit down with a customer and grab a hamburger and a beer and chat versus this fancy steak and wine.
Yeah. I think over the years, I've almost become more of a fan of that. I think when you're first getting started off professionally, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Go have a nice steak and go do all this, all this stuff. And then you do get to the point where you're like, it's just nice to be casual and have a true like heart to heart conversation with somebody, or, just really get to know them at a different level. So yeah, I'm in the same boat, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate the partnership with Fullbay. You guys have been fantastic. And as I've gotten to know you over this last 8 months, you see kind of a continuation of more excellence, right? And so I think, and really not even just a continuation, I think an elevation where you're able to come in and add a different element to it as a whole. So kudos to you, the entire team at Fullbay. We really, really appreciate you guys and everything you're doing out there. And I hope to have you back on the show someday.
Of course, always. Thank you for having us, and thank you for partnering with us. It's a big team effort here at Fullbay, and if you're out there listening and interested in working with us, there's always jobs available. So jump in there and a shameless plug, fullbay.com/next to find more information and be in the tune on new products coming down.
We'll be sure to add that in the show notes. Trent, thanks again for being on.
Thank you, Jay. Take care. Be safe.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.